Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this.
Hey.
I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a lot of fun, by the way.
It will be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So you ready to do this? Let's jump in.
Let's go.
All right. So you're a former math teacher and turned into a real estate investor. So why don't you just talk about that transition, like get it going from teaching to real estate?
Yeah. So for me, it became a process of self-awareness and understanding of the values. I think like for the younger me, it was you had these ideals, the ideals of helping people, the ideals of living life a certain way. And then you're kind of confronted with those ideals. And for me, the teaching realm was wonderful from the standpoint of making a benefit, but it was a challenge from the standpoint of I also had this family that we wanted to continue to grow. And monetarily, if my wife was to stay home, it just wasn't financially feasible. So really kind of faced with that decision, kind of broke down. Now, fortunately for me, and I say fortunately because I don't know that I would have ever left teaching had the administration that I was working with treated me as if, it's one thing that you're working for $30,000 or $40,000 a year. It's another that you are also treated at, not like, this great teacher or nobility or whatever, but like you should be doing more, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. Yeah. And by the way, you have to teach a lesson this way. You don't have autonomy to teach. So that for me, it was fortunate. There was all these convergence of things that kind of made me realize, you know what, I just need to go see what's outside of these walls. And the interesting thing was, I ended up in sales, and this was so far from the world I grew up in, so far from the world that my wife grew up in. When I had a chat with her, she's like, you can't do this. You're this noble math teacher. Sales is for the sleazy and slimy. And I said, I don't think it has to be that way. Like, I think you can do this with integrity. Like, and I'm like, wasn't even so certain, right? I'm just like, I'm going to be integrous and we'll see if it works. What, of course, you discover later on is that whatever degree of integrity you have, it actually works in your favor, not against you. The methods of selling have more to do with being integrous and communicating clearly and so on and so forth. So once I moved into sales, the game was over at that point. And then I realized, oh my gosh, like I can use these communication skills from teaching to sell products, and and when income changes and our opportunities change. So we started investing in real estate. And once we started investing in real estate, then it was like, oh my, then the world was truly open to us, because now there's communication skills, there's sales skills. And, once you put it into a vehicle, an opportunity vehicle like real estate, then your wealth accelerates, income accelerates, and things can get a little bit different. So
That makes complete sense. I mean, and as a teacher too, you've got a fixed income. When you go into the world of real estate, it's wide open, really,
yeah.
because it's like how many houses you sell, what commission you get off of that, how the deal is structured. And I want to back up real quick, as from myself, also being a former teacher. I don't think people realize that teachers are really salesmen at the end of the day, because if you
100%.
think about it, every day we go into the classroom, you have to sell that class full of kids the lesson you're about to teach, and you have to convince them that they have to buy what it is that you're going to sell them. So
Yes.
I really think every good teacher at their core is a salesperson with
100%.
really good communication skills.
Maybe a better one than most salespeople. Because you think about it, like most of the stuff that I sell, I actually sell it to people that want it, right?
Right.
It's like our conversation, right? It's like you want to grow and improve your business, right? And so it's like that conversation centered around your ideals. You're there. You're not on that call with me because you're forced to.
Oh, same thing. I was, you've got 30 kids staring at you. Maybe 5 of them really want to learn because they understand the value of what it is that you're trying to teach them. But the other 25 sitting there are looking at you like, why? Like, why do I have to do this? I can just get it on my phone. I'm like, what? I wouldn't want to be a teacher today. I started 30 years ago, and it is completely different
Yes.
today than it
Yeah.
was then. And my heart goes out to those teachers out there, because they do not have an easy job. I can relate to you about the administration. More,
Yeah.
more. Oh, by the way, your pay doesn't change,
Oh, no, our
So
pay went down. My first year and my second
that's
year, we took an
crazy.
8.5% pay cut while the
Wow.
administration took a 2% pay raise. Like, we're
Wow.
taking
Where
people
did you
making six
teach?
figures.
Where was this?
This was in Central Valley, California. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's completely different world.
Yeah.
Definitely. But still, nonetheless, I mean, they all have their challenges. And you're right, the pay didn't change. It's like I worked harder. I always worked my weekends. I always worked my nights, but you didn't seem to have an extra paycheck. Versus in real estate, if I list three or four other houses and I'm really hustling and I've got these listings, well, then your return is much greater. So
Much
I can
greater.
see why real estate made so much more sense. I'm curious, how long did you stay a teacher and go into the real estate space? Like, did they ever overlap or did you just
Mm.
quit teaching and go right into
I went into sales. Yeah. So I taught 2009, and then I taught half of the year in 2010 at the high school. And then I switched to an alt ed school, which provided, it was a bigger challenge. And so that was exciting to me, but it did still solidify, like, this is still like, we're making decisions on Friday nights if we eat Little Caesars pizza or if we run the air conditioner. Like, that was the decision
Mm,
levels we were making. And it was like, you know what, for working these 60 hours or so, I felt like I was working 30 or 40 or whatever it is in the classroom plus lesson prep and grading. It was like, this is like a huge amount of effort and sacrifice, and then
mhm,
to also have to sacrifice on the end. And obviously it was in when the economy wasn't doing as well, so I think teaching has gotten a little bit more, I don't know if you call it lucrative, but a little bit more, able to live, so to speak. But yeah, it was just one of those things where, like, I couldn't make those, so I left in 2011, and I went into B2B sales for 3.5
mhm.
years. And that, honestly, that was such a blessing for our family, because I had a base pay plus commission. So I wasn't worried about the bills being paid. The base pay actually in sales was higher than my teaching salary.
Mhm.
And then I could triple it if I actually sold a lot of stuff. And so that gave me the foundation of taking the communication skills that I had and learning, how do you then communicate with people in a way that helps them make decisions and helps them make decisions in a way that will better their lives. And that was kind of the missing link. Also, like, it gave me a lot of softer communication skills. Like, how does a person build confidence if they don't have any, like, psychologically and also in their voice?
Was that your experience to build that psychological muscle? That
I leveraged, like, I'm a teacher, right? And so I
right.
think a lot of teachers are also learners, right? And which is why they want to teach. So for me, when I got into sales, I was not a salesperson. I was a teacher. And so, like, when I'm going up, like, I just remember driving into the plant, and I was around sales guys the way you think of them, right? Smooth talkers and high energy and all these things. And I'm coming in like introverted, all these opposites. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to succeed here, I've got to be very technically good. I have to learn, like, I have to be good at the craft. And so
Mm.
I was studying every salesperson I could get my hands on, their material, audio, and otherwise. My boss actually told me that I was one of the, if not the worst salesperson he's ever hired from a vocal standpoint. So, just because I was so nervous. And so,
Mhm.
like, I would just rep it, and you start to recognize that, like, vocally, confidence actually is your air gets restricted, right? Like, when you get
Mhm.
nervous, you do certain things in your body, and it restricts the flow of air. Air comes out in a different place, and so you can muscle memory your way to sounding confident through repetition. You can also, I mean, obviously, people are aware that you can practice scripts. Although scripts will
Mhm.
will hurt you in the long run, because conversational flow is pretty key in selling, but you can muscle memory your way. So, like, I was learning how to essentially manufacture confidence in the beginning until I
Mhm.
could have genuine confidence later on.
I'm shaking my head. It's so funny because I went from teaching into a financial advisor position, and one of my first jobs that he asked me to do was to call clients. And I have to tell you, it wasn't really sales, but for me, it was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to get on the phone. What if they ask me a question I don't know how to answer?" And it's funny you should say that because I did have to dig deep for that confidence that you don't have. And then you have
Sure.
to have that belief in yourself that, "Hey, you know what? I can do this. Just rep it through." You're right. Just keep doing it and you'll get better at it. My very first couple interviews, 5, 6 of them, you go back and listen and you can hear how nervous I was. Now it's like, it's just a podcast interview.
That's it. Well, and I think that's what reps does. Like, something you're expressing, I found to be true as well, which is really this idea that a certain number of reps, I think, can almost automatically, like, make you lower. I don't know if you call it ego or pride, but it's really this ability to be like, you know what, I'm just okay with the result, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And I think like as a teacher, we had all the answers. So yes, we were up presenting and communicating, but there wasn't a question we didn't know. I mean, especially in math,
Right.
right? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
what y equals mx plus b? We know rise over run, those types of things. But you go into sales, now you might not know 75% of the questions. And so it's really like this ability to be very comfortable being incompetent until you are
Mhm.
competent. But like after a certain number of reps, you're like, well, they already know me anyways, right? Like I'm found out at this point. So
Yeah, yeah, I do the same thing in my job too. I'll get asked one of those, offshoot questions. I'm like, "You know what? That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that
yeah,
one."
100%.
So after you left teaching, what
Mhm.
was it about real estate or life in general that became easier than you thought? And what were some things that became harder than you thought?
So it's a very good question. So I would say the thing that was easier is I tapped into energy in a way that I had never tapped into. I had passion. I I want to use the right words to describe this, but as a teacher, like it tapped into your heart. It tapped into that valve where you're watching people grow and develop as human beings. And that's just like it's so purposeful and rich and meaningful. In sales, like there was some of that, but it was replaced more with like an energy. Like there's an excitement. And so not only are you around excitable people, but there's like I mean, when you make a $12,000 commission, which was a half or a third of my income for the year, and I made it
Mhm.
like a couple weeks into the sales job, it was like, whoa, that's something to get excited about. So
Right.
there was a lot more energy and excitement. I actually thought too, like because of the teaching environment where you had to teach this lesson this way, going into the sales environment where things were much more varied was really positive for me. Where it's like I didn't know what the person was going to say. So like I went back into learning mode, and learning mode for me was very, very exciting. And then when that parlayed into real estate, it kind of became a little bit of both because it was really this idea that, okay, I could impact a family by helping them make really good decisions. So there is a purpose there. People had been trapped in some bad decisions. And I could also make really good income. So I think the sales allowed, and plus, of course, I mean, especially when I went into real estate, like I had complete control over my schedule. I worked like a madman, but I still had control. So I think having control, having that freedom, uh, making better money, helping people out, it was really like I had so many people ask me, "Are you going to go back to teaching?" It's like, no, like no. I have years that I make 5, 10, 20 times what I would make as a teacher. Like so will I teach people stuff? I teach people stuff every day. I teach people how to buy houses. I teach people how to grow their wealth. I teach people, but as a W-2 classroom teacher, it would take a miracle. Yeah.
Yeah. Did leaving teaching or actually going into the sales job, did that allow you it sounds like you are very excited, you have that energy there. Did you find it allowed you to be more of your authentic self and just bring out aspects that teaching didn't allow you to bring out, from a
All over
character
the
or
place.
personality yeah. Did you
Absolutely.
feel more at home then?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, like I like to be in environments where I can be myself. And you're kind of
Mhm.
mentioning that, right? And so part of being yourself is being able to speak your actual beliefs. We actually live in a very interesting time in society right now where large swaths of the population feel like they can't say what they truly think without some real problems. And so as a teacher, you're very limited in what you can
Mhm.
say about anything. And I think there's actually good reason for that in teaching. Like, I mean, I'm not there to persuade people on huge topics. I'm there to teach them math. But in business, as you're selling, it's like the conversations were much more open. And that was like really exciting to me. Like when I was having conversations with the business owners as I was selling or the clients in real estate, like I'm hearing their dreams and their passions and where they're going to move in the country and all these types of things. So yeah, much more free in that way. So freedom of schedule was really valuable for me. Freedom of being able to communicate with people and solve a need and not worry about like, oh, if I say this word wrong, then all of a sudden the administration is going to crack down on me, so to speak. I mean, obviously there's laws in real estate that limit what you say, but those are so minimal
Right,
comparatively.
right.
Like
Yeah.
you could, as long as you're treating people well and fairly and all that stuff. So I would say, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like the freedom that's you could tell from our podcast. Like that's like if we're talking about virtues and values, like being controlled by another person, being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. For me,
Mhm.
I know other people can handle it better, but like for me, that is very tough.
I didn't handle it well. That was
Yeah.
my that was my problem with teaching as well.
Yeah.
So, you briefly talked about the podcast. Let's go into that. So, how and when did podcasting fit into your life? Talk about the Freedom Chasers podcast, how it was born, where you are with it now, and where you see it going.
Yeah. So after 3.5 years in sales, I went into real estate agency and did some investing, but mostly focused on being an agent, growing a team. So I grew a team for 3 or 4 years, and we still have that team in place today. It's not as much the focus as it was because in 2018 I started investing locally and then across the country. So we started buying properties across the country, and so as we started buying properties, it became like, hey, there's a little bit more freedom now. Not entire freedom, but enough to where we could rearrange our life fairly easily, and maybe I wouldn't have to work anymore, or I could work very selectively. And so as that became more possible, then it was like, well, what do I want to do? And so I had really two ideals, right? It's like I have what I'm doing now, but the future vision was like I still want to impact people, primarily kids if I can. And so there was this idea of a podcast about critical thinking and helping people, really develop their thought processes. But then I thought, well, what happens if I launched a podcast in business first to learn the skills, and that's probably a little bit more monetizable, and that could be something, and then maybe down the road, we could expand it a bit. So Tim, a person who helped me buy some properties in Chicago, also kind of had a similar vision, and we just kind of started. We said, let's just do a couple episodes and see what happens. We did 3 on the very first day because we're like, let's make a day of it. So we did 3, and it was like, this is really fun. And then we did 3 or 4 the next week, and that was really fun. And the next thing you know, we're like, let's do this. So he had some income coming in from doing broker price opinions. I had some income coming in from the properties and some of the agent work. And next thing you know, we're like full bore. So that was May 13th of last year. We've recorded about 400 plus episodes, something
Oh my
like that.
gosh.
I don't keep exact track, but it's
How how often does it come out then?
daily,
That was Oh, daily. Okay.
7
Oh,
days. Yeah.
wow. 7
Yeah.
days a week, and how long is each of the
They used to be an
episodes?
hour, some a little longer, but mostly an hour. Now we're 30 minutes. So, but yeah, I mean, we
That's a
record.
lot of work. That's a
It,
lot of work.
I call it a lot of fun, but yeah, it is a lot of
Well, a
work.
lot of work. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, I'm looking at it from my perspective. I also produce my own
Yes.
podcast, and I do
Right.
all my own stuff. So I'm from behind the scenes. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, sometimes, to get one out once a week, I can't imagine daily," but I
Yes.
can also see how you put people in place to do those things. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No,
yeah.
it's great.
And then your focus, so the name Freedom Chasers
Basis.
Podcast, talk about the name.
Yeah, so obviously the main fundamental freedom that most people chase and that we can hopefully provide some insight and knowledge to the podcast on is financial freedom. But we don't hope that that's where it stops, right? I mean, generally what we see is a lot of people want to be first financially free so they feel the freedom to pursue other levels of freedom, right? Freedom
Mhm.
from addiction, freedom from all these things. Not that it has to go in that sequence, it's just we see generally that's how it goes, and that's where we can provide value. So the hope is people will listen to the podcast, get strategies that can help them increase their financial freedom, and then they can really spend time and energy focusing on how else can I be free? Can I be free from, bad health, or from maybe they spend more time with their family and have freedom to have great relationships with their family and their friends. And so that was really the main driver is providing knowledge to people in a way that they could have greater freedom and purpose in their life.
Oh, perfect. So, what are some of the topics that you guys really like talking about, or you find you're gravitating towards more lately?
So Tim is and I are similar but different. So for me, I really like psychological topics, and Tim probably likes a little bit more strategic. We both cover both to some degree, but if we're talking about me, my personal enjoyment, I personally enjoy when we can unpack a philosophical and psychological argument that can help people. I know that those typically don't do as well in the views and the analytics. People usually like more like what's the ABCs of how I do this, but personal enjoyment for me would be that. And then of course we try and provide a lot of strategic, tactics that people can use. So I mean, we interview people all across the gamut. I would say like it's really fun to see people that do strategies that are just simple.
Mhm.
There's a lot of strategies that work, but not very many of them that are simple. Like it's really fun for me to see like a really elegant, simple solution to
Mhm.
something, So and someone that can articulate it really well. It's a skill to be able to not only have a strategy, but have boiled it down so well that it sounds really easy to implement.
Mhm. So easy stuff. Do you have something off the top of your head that you can think of that would have been a simple strategy that you talked about recently?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like there's people that do $30 million of real estate agent work a year on $1,000 ad spend by just posting in Facebook groups about the local events that are happening. There are
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's crazy. I mean, and this is not as simple, but like there's guys doing land deals that they're making 6 and 7 figures per deal based on just adding a couple small strategies to their acquisition side, buying and selling on seller finance, and a few other nuances to it. So it's really cool to see like people combining a couple strategies that are both in and of themselves learnable, and if you use them together, then it can create scale, or it can create impact, or and we interview people that do hiring, we like all these different types of things. So it's just fun for me to see various elements of the business and expertise. It's kind of both a positive because I get to learn, and it's also like looking in a mirror and seeing your own mistakes. Like someone comes on and they say something, and you're like, man, if I would have met you 5 years ago, that would have saved me 100 grand, or that would have, saved me 3 years of my life, or all of these things. Now, would I have listened to him 5 years ago? I don't know. But now I would, because now I know the pain I went through.
So, yeah, I mean, I can see that too. The beauty of podcasting is you get to talk to so many different cool people, and you get to learn a lot, and I can relate to you as well. I've had guests on that I'm like, "Man, I wish I had talked to you 2 years ago."
Yeah.
I wish I had known what
Yeah.
you were going to say, but that's okay because I've learned that all things happen in perfect timing for
Yeah.
perfect reasons. And the other thing that you talked about that I would love to unpack is that you like to talk about psychological things and how
Yeah.
the brain works and the studying people
Yeah.
behind that. What do you find so fascinating about that? Like what really gets you fired up when you think about that?
Okay. So I'll share what it is to me personally, and then I'll share like how this could benefit others. So I am a person that is like I'm a math major, right? So what do you think of when you think of math major, right? You typically think of very, very analytical, not tied to fashion, which is so true of me, still is. Like whatever you see now is like not who I was, right? Like I'm learning, right? But then there's also like the nerdiness factor, right? That comes in, and obviously that's because you're disconnected in certain ways. But like generally, like for most people, if you have a superpower in one area, it comes at the expense of another area, right? So for me,
Mhm.
I had a hard time reading people as a kid. And when I started getting into teaching and the ministry and then sales, all of those things revolved around a need to understand how people operate. But I was fundamentally deficient in my knowledge of how people operated. So for me, it became the study. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like I don't have the same tool set that most people do, but through reading and analyzing and then coming back, I eventually felt like I built a skill set that was based more on systems even than on the way that most people. So for me, it's like so exciting because it's my ability to persuade, it's my ability to help. One of the saddest things for me personally is knowing somebody needs help and being unable to persuade them to get the help that they need. Like you
Mm,
can see this in sales, but you can also see this like what happens if someone's suicidal? What happens if someone is on the brink of some really bad decisions? If you don't have the persuasion skill sets to get into their world, that opportunity might be lost. It could be life or
right.
death. It could be a healthy life versus an unhealthy life, and by no means perfect. Like I mean, no salesman is perfect if they're being honest. But
Right.
increasing the skills increases the probability. So I would say it's so exciting for me on so many levels because it increases my ability to help people and to obviously provide for the family.
Yeah, I find that math teachers, like, we tend to be analytical, but then we also study things. We
Yes.
study patterns. We look for patterns, and you can find patterns in numbers, but you can also find patterns in people as well. So when you learn how to read people patterns, then it helps you to be more in tune with the situation that's in front of you. And just
Yeah.
to your point that you're talking about, if somebody needs to be persuaded a certain way, if you're in tune to them, and what they have to say or what they're saying, you have the opportunity to be able to help them and maybe persuade them in a way that's going to have a positive impact on their life
My
and
life.
yours too. What do you see like that are some roadblocks or limiting beliefs around people that you work with, and what do you do with that when you see it?
So one of the things that you see very often is you have two personality types, I'll say, that come into the business, right? You have people that need to control almost everything, and then the people that control almost nothing. So both can be problematic, right? It's really the balance is somewhere in between. So I would say a lot of the people that we coach tend to want to control things too much. So for example, like I'm coaching a real estate client. He does multiple six figures right now as a real estate agent and small team leader. And he basically does almost everything himself. So he saw a podcast that we were on, is like, hey, you have built a business that did over $1 million in commissions, in a year. And that's my goal. I would like you to help me. And so I said, okay, let's talk about it. So we broke down the business and it was interesting. So I was like, well, how do you want to get there? And he's like, well, I'm going to need to obviously triple my business to make the numbers work. And then I was like, if I was a genie and I could triple your business today, like, could you show 3 times more buyers or take three? And he's like, well, no. So, but there was a challenge, right, to letting go. And so the limiting belief that needed to be tackled was that he's the only person that can do this thing.
Mhm.
And what oftentimes I found with limiting beliefs is that they're sitting on top of other beliefs that have to be addressed. And so, that people are going to take advantage of you, that life is like, not like all these different sub beliefs that could come and solidify that thing. And so really it was a process of diving deep. Well, in a few weeks time, he's now hired multiple people. And so now his closings are going up. He's getting some of his time back. Like, it's really fun. I'm the type of real estate agent and coach and investor that likes to use GIFs or GIFs or whatever you call those, things. So we're
Mhm.
sending these funny things back and forth, but it's so fun to see that, right? He went from 16 hours a day or so to much less than that. So I'd say that's really, it's a deep dive in understanding that the limiting belief that you're getting is oftentimes not the thing that needs to be solved. It's the symptom,
Mhm.
not the cause. And sometimes that goes back to childhood issues. Sometimes that goes back to just some basic business beliefs. Sometimes it goes into having enough systemic information to feel confident. Like, how do I know that this person's not going to take advantage of me? Well, you don't,
Mhm.
right? So let's think through the logic of what happens if they do, right? What's better? Would you rather be in a world that you're still working 16 hours a day, 5 or 10 years from now? Or
Mhm.
do you want to solve this problem? And so you're kind of going back and forth and navigating through until you find out what works for them and move them forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would imagine in your coaching experience that, like you were talking about, it's not just about fixing the problem that's on the surface. You
Yeah.
sometimes have to go down 2 or 3 or 4 layers that usually, and I think that usually aren't like evident right in the beginning. And once you can get down there, then you can start making some headway into where it is that you want to go. You have a very unique way of approaching problems and coaching people. And what I found fascinating is that you build systems, but you do them from the back end, like you work backwards with it. Share a little bit about that in your process. So,
So it's actually why I wear my hat backwards. Like, there is just something inside of me that craves doing things differently. And that can be a humongous help to people. It can be a humongous difficulty. I don't usually prescribe unconventional methods untested to other people. I love to do them myself. But what you find is there's a lot of inefficiencies in business. There's a lot of ideas that have been continually chanted that really are not the best way. Or, and this is what I'll submit to people, that might not be the best idea for you. So,
mhm,
for example, everybody comes to the business with their own strengths, their own weaknesses, their own personality, their own limiting beliefs. And while in an ideal world, you knock out every limiting belief you've ever had, but realistically, that's pretty hard to do. But what limiting beliefs can we work around until we get to higher levels of success where you can hire or find other ways, right? Like, if you had to extract every limiting belief from somebody all at one time, they'd probably just die, right? Like, it's just way too much. So
and,
why,
once you kill one limiting belief, there's usually one to take its place. So,
which is
the
another
more you
business
grow,
principle.
you more you find them, right? They just come out of the
100%.
woodwork.
Well, because
Yeah.
usually what happens is you solve a limiting belief. And then when you solve a
Mhm.
limiting belief, your business and life get better. And because they get better, like, let's say, for example, if I installed a system in someone's business to do email or sales or whatever, and that business added 300,000 or $1 million of revenue in their business, they're going to now have an operations problem that they didn't have before, right? So even just success itself brings on new levels. And so if you hire all the staff requisite to serve this $1 million of new business you brought on, well, now all of a sudden you need to go get more. And so it's like this perpetual cycle that you have to continue to elevate. Every problem you solve creates the next level. And so, one, it's fundamentally becoming a person that loves the next level and loves
Mhm.
continual growth. But why backwards? For me, like, I feel like I'm a person that loves really operating from like highly logical places. I know we all actually make decisions emotionally, but I feel like it comes from a logical place. And I also like just always like to question the fundamental set of assumptions. The other thing too, being a person that likes to talk to people, but also likes to have my off time, I don't build businesses exactly the same way. Like I like to build them around my personality. And I think I could be different in that way than some people, where I'm willing to go to some crazy lengths sometimes to build a business around me versus building a business traditionally. So I would say, like, who can I help? I can definitely help people that want to build businesses around themselves, not
Mhm.
getting exactly traditional advice. It's like, if you want somebody that's going to tell you the truth, even if it hurts, and you're going to want somebody that's going to be like, all right, let's craft this around you. That's a little bit more my style than, okay, let's do everything absolutely cookie cutter. I mean, obviously that's doable. It's just not as fun. So, yeah,
Yeah, and it gives you that opportunity to learn about the person and dig into who they are, their character, their background, and really figure out how they think too. And that's what makes what you do so unique
yeah.
because you're also studying the person as well, but you're also figuring out how to put a system and process in place for them that's tailored right to them. I think that's just you honing into your superpowers and using them to
Yeah.
help somebody. What are some small steps that you took that you didn't think were going to have big results?
Oh
In
man.
anything.
Oh, like I'm an avid lover of trying to become the best version of myself. We have one life, and so as a person who has one life, like pretty much everybody else, I would imagine, I'm always trying to find ways. And so, like I've loved strategy in business so much that I can do it sometimes at the expense of my health and these
Mhm,
other things. And so, like one thing I've discovered that I'm really passionate about right now. I discovered it like 6, 8 weeks ago. So this is not through beta trials of my own life yet, guys. But I found that, like, so I've lost 50, 40 or 50 pounds like 5 times in my life. So losing the weight's actually been fairly doable, but maintaining's been the hard thing. So I actually started fasting 1 day a week about 6 weeks ago. It's been pretty profound because for people that like me that are hard chargers that have a hard time unplugging and disconnecting, like I've actually found fasting to be far more than just a tool to lose weight. Like it's really kind of an interesting phenomenon. So like that's one thing that I'll say has had huge. I mean, I've lost 15 pounds in the last 6 weeks eating foods that I enjoy. And I've started to gain back some detachment abilities from various aspects of work and other things. So I would say the thing that is maybe seemingly small, seemingly big is like I just take a 1 day a week and I don't eat. And what I do is I allow the hunger pains to guide me into things that I want to think about. Because sometimes it's hard. Like you have these things that you want to read or learn or grow on, but you forget to do them. Well, when you have a full day of hunger pains available to you, and you set the mental trigger that during this time I'm going to think about this or I'm going to do this or
mhm,
that, then you have a full day. And so I would say I'm actually looking to expand not the number of hours that I'm not eating, but the amount of things that I'm fasting from, like fasting from my
mhm.
cell phone, fasting from these other things. And so I would say that's probably the most recent.
Yeah, I still do practice intermittent fasting, but you know what? It's interesting you said about the fasting, not just from the food, but from the cell phone and just to unplug from things. And fasting, when people think about it, they think about it from a restrictive, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. But I don't know about you, and you can talk into this. I find when I fast, it's actually freeing.
Very.
Because I find that I'm free from having to worry about going to grab something to eat or from my phone, I'm free from distractions.
Yeah.
I'm free from being tethered to this electronic thing that I can just walk away from it and then go and experience life that's right in front of me. But, if you can fast, there is definitely more benefits than just the health benefits that are there. Kudos to you for
Thank you.
losing 40 pounds. That's a
Yeah.
lot. The
Yeah.
most I've lost is like 30,
Yeah.
and I can attest to it keeping it off. It is kind of hard. And the older you get, it doesn't I'm gonna spoiler alert, it just doesn't get any easier.
Right? Which
But
which is so true, right? And you hear that. So it's like,
yeah.
my goodness. So, getting
Yeah.
a handle on it sooner than later is obviously the optimal.
This is true. So fasting does help, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's some small steps. Hey, here's some of my favorite questions. So, if
Yeah.
you could go back in time to your younger self and
Yeah.
deliver a message, what would that be?
How young?
Oh, your choice.
Okay. I definitely would go back to my high school self, and I would tell my high school self that focus 100% on building skills and relationships. And I would actually get even more bold about not following the traditional path, because I think most of coaching and things like that actually lead people to that conclusion anyway. So I think, it's hard to say. I had so much benefit from being a teacher and all these things, but if I could have taken those 6 or 7 years, and I definitely encourage myself to go spend a day with 100, like take a summer or 2 summers and spend every single day with a different profession during the week, right? And just see, experience. I think it's crazy how we commit 4 years and a lot of money, if not more than 4 years and a lot of money, to something that we've never even seen with our own eyes how it works. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems crazy to me. Like, people will get a job and then they'll realize on day 5 of their first job they don't want to do this after they
Mhm.
spent hundred
Yeah.
thousand dollars in school. So I would say I would have spent my summers a bit differently, and that would have been the advice, at least.
That sounds like an awesome class you could produce. Like, it sounds like something that every kid from high school should graduate with. If you
Yeah,
think about it, there's 180 days in a school year. Let's take out a couple of the off days, baloney days, the days you're going to miss anyway, and go to maybe like 160.
yeah,
Wouldn't that be brilliant for somebody to construct a class that would be 160 different professions? Every
yeah.
day kids would come in.
Already signed up
Here's
for
a
them,
different
ready to go. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, here's a different person, or even just have people video them and then having discussions around that.
yeah,
Somebody, I guess, could just steal my idea right there. I think that's a brilliant
100%.
idea.
Yeah.
You could
No,
do that 160 days of 160 different professions and design a whole curriculum around that. How cool would that be?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, as we are kind of wrapping up, I have my famous 3 here. The first one, what's one question you wish I would have asked, or one topic that you wish I would have covered, and how would you have answered it, or how would you expand it?
Well, if we had an unlimited time to do an interview, I would love to have talked about personality assessments and structures and how that works in business and sales and those types of things, and people discovering a lot about who they are and how they make decisions. And how would I have answered it? I would have given myself plenty of time. I've given 5-hour talks on this.
This sounds like another podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
So
So
we'll pause on that, and then you can, just come back for another podcast.
sounds
How's
great.
that?
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
Actually, I would love to have that discussion with you as well, because I find the psychology of people fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think that would be an awesome topic for us to talk about. What's a book recommendation?
Oh man, I like to make book recommendations so specific to people's needs, right?
Okay. What's one
So,
that changed you then?
gosh, there's so many that have had such a huge impact on my life. So I would say, I mean, like if someone just needs to keep pushing, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think The Power of One More by Ed Milet. I think Atomic Habits by James Clear, from an Enneagram perspective, which is my favorite personality assessment as far as motivation goes. I think The Road Back to You is a really good entry level primer just to kind of get some basics. I mean, obviously, like if you're looking to grow a business, I think a lot of what Alex Hormozy is starting to put out is pretty impactful.
Oh,
But
yeah.
and what he's about to come out with, I think we're recording this August 16th. I think in 3 days he's coming out with
Yep.
his $100 million leads book.
I know, I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's like
So
it's gonna be a big one.
yeah, I mean, I could give 100, but I would say, like, a lot of times I think the biggest struggle that people have is generally not knowing what they need to do, but doing what they need to do. So it's surrounding the overcoming of limiting beliefs and
Mhm.
setting proper habits and triggers. So I would say for that reason, I would give those 2 books.
All right, perfect. From your story, what's something that my listeners can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
I think the biggest thing is commit to a plan of action, and I mean, like, truly commit to it. I mean, if you need to take a weekend to map out that plan, then great. But in business, it's better to make mistakes than to not take action. And so I think the key is plan a course of action, stick with it, really see it through, and then I mean, obviously there are times to make adjustments, but I would say generally people fail due to lack of action. So it's really putting an action plan together, getting very detailed about what the plan is, what steps. So for us, like this week, my calendar has about 45 meetings on it, and
Wow.
and so all filled by the team. And so for me, it's like the course of action for this week was set long in advance. And so it's easy to walk in a plan if it's set in advance and it's there. So I would say set the plan, set the intention, and take action.
Take action. Perfect. Small steps, big wins. So to go do something is better than nothing. Matt,
Absolutely.
thanks. Thank you
Yep.
so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to our next conversation,
Likewise.
honestly. And you're right, there's not enough time.
Yeah,
Well, there
absolutely.
is. I mean, I guess we could go for an hour and a half, but I don't know how good hour and a half podcaster is.
Analytically, they don't usually produce very well.
No,
So
no, they don't. I don't think so. I don't think so either. How can my listeners reach out to you?
yeah, I think the best way is on Facebook. It's probably my preferred social platform. I am on Instagram, so my Facebook is Matt Cavanaugh, and then my Instagram is Matt Cavvy with two V's, MattCavvy. Either one of those would work. And just feel free to message me on what they're looking for. It could be a question. I'll try and get back to them. But if they'd like to go deeper on some stuff, just let me know.
That's perfect. Great. Thank you.
Yep,
Thanks
of
for your
course,
time.
of course. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for watching or listening to my podcast. I value your time with me because I realize you could be listening to someone else right now. And I also want you to know that I now offer coaching and consulting. So if you're thinking about creating a course but not sure how to structure it, or you have a small step you need to take to lead to a big result, but you're not sure what the in-between looks like, check out my website at www.suesaller.com for more information and to request a free consultation. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps and make today awesome, friends. God bless.